The modern tennis fan only thinks of Novak Djokovic, Rafael Nadal, and Roger Federer when one thinks about the greatest tennis players of all time. Now, there is merit in that thinking, but there were others who were also legends of tennis. Novak Djokovic came very close to winning all four majors in the same calendar year. Another person who came as close as Novak Djokovic to repeating the achievement of Don Budge, thereby almost becoming the second male player to win a calendar year Grand Slam, was an Australian legend by the name of Lew Hoad. Lew Hoad played on the amateur tour just 6 years, from 1951 to 1957, before he turned professional. His statistical record and list of accomplishments during that short time period reads like a player with three times that longevity. He appeared in 23 major finals, winning 13 across singles, doubles, and mixed doubles competition. Lew Hoad was part of an endless brigade of talented Australian players who owned this tennis era. Lew Hoad was cut from a slightly different cloth from his Australian teammates, however, as his game was not as silky smooth as Ken Rosewall, or all court refined like Rod Laver, or multifaceted like Mervyn Rose, Adrian Kist, or Ashley Cooper. He was strong and powerful, quick to pounce on a shot, more like Ken McGregor and Frank Sedgman. But Lew Hoad lacked the patience necessary to stay in a rally for the long haul. He thrived on winning points and matches as quickly as possible, and for a 6 year stretch, Lew Hoad did just that. His talents were considerable. He possessed a full array of shots, but they were fostered solely on hard hitting. There was no finesse in his game. Lew Hoad was a well built and muscular 5'8", 175 pounder who was adept enough to win on the fast grass courts in London and New York, and even the slow courts in Paris. The Aussies had their home Grand Slam tucked in their back pocket, winning a mind boggling 17 of 19 possible championships from 1950 to 1968. It would take a mighty fine player to garner just one championship. They just weren't easy to win, and Lew Hoad earned his title in 1956, defeating his long-time doubles partner Ken Rosewall 6-4, 3-6, 6-4, 7-5. It atoned in some fashion for losing to Ken Rosewall in the 1955 final 7-9, 4-6, 4-6. So just to repeat, Australians won 17 of 19 possible Australian championships from 1950 to 1968. It beggars belief that the most recent instance of an Australian male tennis player winning the men's singles championship in the Australian Open was as far back as 1976. How times change. After the 1956 victory at the Australian, tennis got very interesting for the blonde-haired, blue-eyed and handsome Lew Hoad. He arrived in Paris as the number one seed and slugged through difficult third and fourth round victories, settled nicely for straight set wins in the quarterfinals and semifinals, and then defeated Sweden's Sven Davidson 6-4, 8-6, 6-3 for his second major singles championship in that calendar year. Next came Wimbledon. Lew Hoad earned the number one seed, but the road was arduous. The quarters and semis against fellow Aussie Mal Anderson and then United States star Ham Richardson were grinding four-set victories that led to a final against fellow Aussie Ken Rosewall. Lew Hoad played a brilliant match, holding off a surging Ken Rosewall 6-2, 4-6, 7-5, 6-4. One championship, the US Nationals, and one player, Ken Rosewall, stood between Lew Hoad and a calendar year Grand Slam, something which only Don Budge had achieved till that point in the male circuit. Ken Rosewall, who shared 6 major doubles championships with Lew Hoad, had shared a unique lifelong bond. So it could have been possible that Ken Rosewall would have allowed Lew Hoad to win. But such things do not happen. They probably only happen in fiction. Both were consummate professionals. They were friends, rivals, competitors, and Davis Cup teammates. Their playing styles were as disparate as a rock and an egg, which raised the tension at Forest Hills to palatable levels. The US Nationals proceeded as anticipated, but in a modest upset, the number 2 seed Ken Rosewall defeated the number 1 seed Lew Hoad 4-6, 6-2, 6-3, 6-3. Doubles competition padded Hoad's Hall of Fame resume. He won three titles in Australia in 1953, 1956, and 1957, three titles in Wimbledon in 1953, 1955, and 1956, one title at the French in 1953, and one title at the US Nationals in 1956. All but 1955 with Aussie Rex Hartwig and the 1957 Australian with Neil Fraser were won with Ken Rosewall. He captured the 1954 French mixed doubles with Maureen Connolly. In 1957, Lew Hoad had one final swan song before departing for the lure and $125,000 signing bonus of professional tennis organized by Jack Kramer. He won his second straight Wimbledon Gentlemen's Singles Championship as the number 1 seed, trouncing compatriot and number 2 seed Ashley Cooper 6-2, 6-1, 6-2. Since the Open era, a scant few have retained their Wimbledon title, a mark of a great champion. Lew Hoad, Rod Laver, John Newcombe, Bjorn Borg, John McEnroe, Boris Becker, Pete Sampras, Roger Federer, and Novak Djokovic. Also, Carlos Alcaraz. The professional tour, which many traditionalists labeled as a circus, pitted Lew Hoad against reigning champion Pancho Gonzalez. Hoad had a long history having a bad back and it plagued him throughout the first 2 years of his professional career. Gonzalez considered Lew Hoad the toughest, most skillful adversary that he ever played. He was the only guy who, if I was playing my best tennis, could still beat me, said Gonzalez in an interview to the New York Times in 1995. I think his game was the best game ever, better than mine. He was capable of making more shots than anybody. His two volleys were great. His overhead was enormous. He had the most natural tennis mind with the most natural tennis physique. Lew Hoad was a finalist in 8 pro events, winning the Tournament of Champions in 1959 over Pancho Gonzalez. His losses in finals at the US Pro, French Pro, and Wembley Pro all came against his nemesis Ken Rosewall, 5 times and 3 straight at the Wembley Pro from 1961 to 1963, and new adversary Gonzalez twice at the US Pro in 1958 and 1959. The true mettle of an Australian is service to the Davis Cup team. Lew Hoad was no stranger to international competition. He played 4 times in 1953, 1954, 1955 and 1956, leading Australia to championships in 1953, 1955 and 1956 and compiled an impressive 17 wins to 4 defeats record. In December 1953, Australia and the United States of America played a classic challenge round match at Kooyong which the Aussies won 3-2. Lew Hoad knocked off Vic Seha, the defending Wimbledon champion, in the first singles match. Rosewall was beaten by defending US champion Tony Trabert. The Seya and Trabert doubles pair defeated Hoad and Rex Hartwig, which left Hoad in a must-win situation against Tony Trabert. A light rain had made the grass court slick, so both players wore spiked shoes to assist with traction. It was as epic a match as the Davis Cup had ever witnessed, with Lew Hoad securing the win 13-11, 6-3, 2-6, 3-6, 7-5. Rosewall notched the victory with a 4-set win over Tony Trabert and later said that Americans had been beaten by 2 babes and a fox. This is what Tony Trabert said, a reference to the wily captaincy of Harry Hopman, the fox, and the 2 babes were Ken Rosewall and Lew Hoad. In his 1979 autobiography, Jack Kramer ranked Lew Hoad as one of the 21 best players of all time. Hoad, who had been in ill health in his later years and was suffering from leukemia, died of a heart attack at the age of 59. For 30 years, Lew Hoad had lived in Spain with his wife Jenny Staley Hoad, who reached the final of the Australian Championships in 1954. Lew Hoad was ranked in the world top 10 5 straight years from 1952 to 1956, reaching number 1 in 1956. He was the first of the charismatic players we saw in the 50s, Lew Hoad's former Davis Cup teammate Neil Fraser told the New York Times after learning of his colleague's death. He produced a brand of tennis that was exciting, different to everyone else, and a joy to watch. I hope you liked watching this video.